Hey everybody, Jim here. Well, 2015's been over for almost a week now, and it's been quite a year for movies. We've had a new Jurassic Park movie, Marvel Studios is still going strong, we got a start of another Star Wars trilogy, and two Pixar movies, as well as a few movies that I was not really anticipating but turned out to be surprise favorites. I thought it would be a good time right now to give you my personal top 10 favorite movies of 2015. Alright, well, let's begin. Avengers Age of Ultron. The first Avengers movie that came out in 2012 really was one of the most fun movies I've ever seen. Not one of the objectively best movies, but just ones that was for pure entertainment and lulz level. It was a ton of fun. And really remains one of my favorite superhero movies. The second one, Avengers Age of Ultron, did not quite live up to the same level as the first one, but it's still a damn entertaining superhero movie. Basically, this one, first I'll get to the weakest parts. The romance that popped up between Bruce Banner and Black Widow really comes out of nowhere. It feels incredibly forced, and honestly, I think the movie would have been better without it. I mean, didn't Bruce miss Betty at all? Did everyone just forget about her? I know she hasn't shown up in a few movies, but did everyone just forget about her? And pretty much a complaint I have with almost every Marvel Studios movie is I feel the villain could have gotten a little more development. I really liked Ultron in this movie, but he really could have gotten a little development to make him scarier. Yeah, you had that quoting of the song from Pinocchio in the trailer, and that comes up a few times in the movie, and that is absolutely awesome. But I really wish he could have explained more how the song from Pinocchio or how elements from Pinocchio really tied into him. I thought it was kind of just glossed over. But despite all that, it's still a lot of fun. The special effects, of course, are excellent. Some of the action sequences really push the boundaries. The end fight where they're trying to stop a whole city from crashing into the planet and destroying the Earth is just a damn good time. And, of course, every single Avenger, these are all just great actors and just great characters. Chris Evans, Chris Hemsworth, Robert Downey Jr. They all have just such great chemistry with each other, and you can just have a good time watching these guys play off each other. You have new characters like Vision, who is incredibly well done, who will probably play a big part in a lot of future Marvel movies. And you got Civil War coming in May. We've got introduction of Spider-Man, Black Panther, Doctor Strange all coming up. So Marvel Studios is really going strong, and this movie was just another good example of that, why it ends up on my top 10 list. Now I'll move on to number 9. The Hateful Eight. That was my expression during many scenes in this movie. This movie is intense. It is gruesome. It is downright sadistic. Not just by normal movie-going standards, it's gruesome even by Quentin Tarantino's standards. This movie is just so over the top. And yet, it still has the qualities that Quentin Tarantino has demonstrated over the years that really make him a quality filmmaker. First of all, I was a massive, massive fan of Django Unchained that came out a few years ago. That movie I just thought was an absolute blast, an absolute masterpiece. This movie doesn't quite live up to that level but it's still a damn entertaining movie. It is nearly 3 hours in length, and most of this movie is all set in one room. Alright, it's just various conversations between characters that sometimes give away to moments of extreme violence. And Quentin Tarantino, he really has a talent for making conversations between two actors on screen without anything else really happening. Even if those conversations are red herrings that don't have anything to do with the main plot, somehow he really manages to make that really entertaining and involving to watch, and this movie is no exception. Unlike Django, where you get kind of a traditional hero's journey, The Hateful Eight, all the characters in this movie are bad people. All of them. Some are worse than others, obviously. There are some who are just kind of off, kind of bad, and then you have some who are just unbelievably sadistic scumbags. And sometimes even a character who demonstrates that he's a contemptible bastard, you can find yourself cheering for him later because he's against someone who's much worse later in the movie. That requires a certain talent, and it shows just how well developed the movie is. It really helps you get into the period. It's set shortly after the Civil War. It really feels like the kind of conversations that people would have had during that period. That makes this a very entertaining and involving picture, but it's not one for the faint of heart, okay? If you can't stomach torture or other excessive gore, things like that, avoid this movie. But if you can stomach those and really just want a quality written, quality directed movie, I will recommend The Hateful Eight. All right, now to number 8. The Good Dinosaur. First of all, let me start by saying that 2015 was not a very strong year for animated movies. I mean, we had DreamWorks Animation only gave us one animated movie this year, Home, and I wasn't very impressed with it. The voice acting was mostly pretty lame, and the jokes were mostly pretty unfunny. It had some good visuals, but was overall just not a very good flick. I haven't even seen Minions, but parents, seriously, $1 billion for that movie? I didn't dislike the Despicable Me movies per se, but I really don't understand the Minions appeal. I just don't get it, personally. However, Pixar has released 2 movies this year, making 2015 the first year that has ever happened. The one they released later in 2015, The Good Dinosaur, is definitely one of Pixar's weaker movies, but it stands as a testament to Pixar's quality that even one of their weaker pictures, probably their third worst, third from the bottom, is still good enough to make it on my top 10 list. Other than the Cars movies, it's probably at the bottom of Pixar's level, but it's still, despite that, a really good movie. I've already did a vlog on The Good Dinosaur earlier, so I'm not going to try to repeat some things, but this is a beautifully animated, a very emotionally involving animated movie. It just wasn't original enough. It didn't have some of the brilliance that better Pixar movies do, but despite that, it's still a really good animated flick. I think it's much better than a lot of other animated movies that were more successful. So, parents, you really need to reevaluate what movies you take your kids to. Because this movie, I think, really deserved more attention, more credit than it did. And overall, The Good Dinosaur, despite some problems, is still a highly recommended movie for me. Well, moving on. Star Wars: The Force Awakens. This start of a new Star Wars trilogy is for the most part a success, and as I've said in my previous video log on this movie, it fixes all the problems of the prequel movies, but at the same time it's a frustrating movie because it is so obsessed with capturing nostalgia from the original trilogy that it often feels very retreading on an original. But despite that, it sets up things pretty nicely. It's a very fun, entertaining action movie, and I hope some of its problems are kind of fixed in episodes 8 and 9. Definitely, the film's visually gorgeous. It really mixes practical effects and CGI much better, and every actor delivers a great performance. Romance flows much better from the story. This is a really good start for Star Wars, and Disney's plans for it really all have me very excited. I'm really hoping that Star Wars will really continue, and by the time a kid today is in their 20s, that there'll be so much new Star Wars content for them to grow up with and enjoy. And I still highly recommend The Force Awakens. The Martian. I already did a vlog about this movie, so I'll try not to repeat myself too much. But as I said in the vlog, it's beautifully shot and really seems like they shot this movie on Mars. And it really is a redemption for Ridley Scott after his previous movie, Exodus, Gods and Kings, was so terrible. Matt Damon's really good in this movie, just as someone trying to survive on Mars. Even if the film isn't quite as emotionally powerful as I felt it could be, it's still a really good movie, particularly for people interested in the future of space exploration, because everything in this movie really seems realistic. Like, in the very near future, everything in this movie seems like stuff that could really happen, and which makes this a really highly recommended movie. Mad Max Fury Road. Mad Max Fury Road is just a kick-ass movie. I mean, the majority of this movie, almost 2 hours, is just driving on the road. There's very little dialogue, and it really doesn't need it. That's what's really great about this movie. It is simplistic, minimalistic storytelling, but I trust the audience are smart enough to figure out what's going on without having things constantly explained to them. And this post-apocalyptic world is just so involving and fascinating. You see a struggle for freedom of these women who are being used as breeders in this future society. You have kind of Mad Max, who, like in the previous movies, isn't really a hero. He's just someone who gets caught up in events around him and is really just kind of wandering around trying to survive. And the action sequences are just superbly shot. That's the main thing I can say about this movie. Too many action sequences in live action movies today are done with horrendous quick cuts and shaky cam and everything going around all over the place and I can't see what's going on. Movie like Bourne and stuff, it just pisses me off, okay? I want to be able to see what's on screen in a live action movie. That's kind of why I've gravitated more towards animated action, because at least, yeah, it may look faker, but you can see who's punching who. Whereas in these live action ones, but Mad Max Fury Road, everything is perfectly shot. There's no shaky cam, there's no quick cuts, and it's done with very little CGI. These are live action actors hitting each other on real cars in a real environment, okay? Yeah, there's computer effects added here and there, but it all feels so real and organic. Watching this movie in 3D on an array with an Atmos sound system, it is just a visceral, awesome experience. That's why Mad Max Fury Road is a highly recommended movie that easily makes it into the top 5 of this list. American Sniper. Yes, this movie technically had an early release in 2014, but in my area, it wasn't really given a wide release until the beginning of 2015, so I'm counting it as a 2015 movie. This movie is just incredible, and the end just feels so powerful. Like, everyone left the theater in total silence after this movie was over, and for very good reason. This movie portrays war, the Iraq War in particular, more realistically than any movie before it has. It's just so gruesome and shows the absolute depravity of Islamic terrorism. And it really well develops its main hero, Chris Kyle. Bradley Cooper gives such an excellent performance. You can tell that he was devoted to giving Chris Kyle his time on screen. He bulked up his body to look like Chris Kyle. He makes Chris Kyle such a relatable character, a relatable person. And that's what makes this movie really strong. This is one of Clint Eastwood's best, and that's saying something from Clint Eastwood, who's been a world-class filmmaker in the past. Yeah, there's a couple elements that don't work here and there, looking at you, fake baby, but this movie still has such a grip on you long after it's over. It really just makes you feel the heartbreak of this situation, of this war. That's why American Sniper is highly recommended. The Gift. The Gift is a movie that really should be shown in high schools, because if more people watched it, high school bullying might go down. This movie really portrays the long-term horrors of bullying better than any movie ever has. Yes, you see often bullying and explored in a lot of movies, but usually the bullies are portrayed as kind of like one-dimensional villains. But this movie really shows bullies for how they really are. It really shows sociopathic tendencies that they have to control others. And it shows that once it's over, it's not just kids will be kids and everything moves on in the long run. It shows that bullies stay bullies, okay? No one really grows out of being a bully. The Gift's performances from all its actors, from Rebecca Hall, from Jason Bateman, from Joel Egerton, who also comes and writes and directs this movie, are all fantastic. The Gift's ending really stays with you, which I will not give away. You really need to see the ending of The Gift. The Gift was a movie I was not looking forward to. The trailers all looked kind of just like a cliche stalker thriller, which you've seen a million times. Yeah, but when I saw it, I was blown away. It really brought back some things for me. The Gift comes highly recommended. Ex Machina. Ex Machina is an example of smartly written science fiction that we do not get enough of anymore. It was made on a relatively low budget. It's a British movie with only $16 million budget, and it's far from the only movie that explores the subject matter, the invention of artificial intelligence, and the potential impact that can have on mankind. But this movie does it better than I've ever seen it before. It just has 3 actors, well, there's 4, but the other one's kind of minor, who kind of all spend the entire movie in this kind of confined space. There's no, like, big citywide destroying action sequences. None of that's in this movie. It doesn't need it either. But it also explores a matter of sexual manipulation. The robot, of course, is in the form of a beautiful woman, kind of as a face of a beautiful woman, but you can kind of see her mechanical parts, which is a great example of computer animation integrating with a live action actor in a perfect manner. But you may ask, why make the machine look like a woman? Why not make her look like Wall-E or something? The movie really goes through that and about how it's all about connecting with our main human protagonist, who's a computer programmer, a nice guy, comes into this situation and is put through all manners of hell. Ex Machina really keeps the tension going from beginning to end. You don't know who to trust. You don't know who's manipulating who. All right, and at the end, you're left with kind of a feeling of grim impending doom, despite the fact that nothing's destroyed, nothing blows up, but you really feel really scared. And that's the great example of a great psychological thriller. And that's what Ex Machina does. And it purely gets these thrills, not through big budget visuals, but purely through strong, brilliant writing. Ex Machina needs to be seen by any fan of science fiction. Inside Out. Not only is Inside Out the finest picture of 2015, it is one of the all-time greatest animated movies ever made. This is a movie that people will be watching in 100 years, assuming civilization's still around, and admiring it as one of the finest movies of its generation. Inside Out is an absolutely brilliant movie. It goes into the mind of a young girl. As honest trailers joked, can't go into an adult man or this movie would be a porno. But it really seems to go through the different aspects of a child's mind. Anyone who's felt these feelings as a kid or remembers this time period, or if you're a kid right now who's going through these things, Inside Out is one of the most relatable movies. You could argue that Riley's problems are first world problems, as some have, but it goes into the mind, shows how these things are really seen through the eyes of a child. It goes through her imaginary friends, imaginary boyfriend, her stores of memories, and having her core emotions as characters. Its themes, such as the importance of sadness, telling kids that it's okay to feel sad sometimes. It's emotionally helpful. All right, and how all your different emotions you feel, they're not something you should suppress. They're something you should embrace. Inside Out is a fantastic movie. I've heard people on the autistic spectrum often who have trouble gripping with their emotions really, really relate to Inside Out. It's visually gorgeous, as Pixar movies always are. Its voice acting's fantastic. Inside Out is just amazing. It is a flawless masterpiece. All right, I don't care if you are 5 years old or 99 years old. Inside Out is a movie for everybody. It is just how animated cinema should be. You take a concept that probably couldn't be done in live action, and through the power of imagination, bring it to the screen in pure visual light. Pixar, I know they've stumbled a little bit in recent years, not quite as been consistently great as they were in the 2000s, but they still are occasionally capable of putting out a truly fantastic movie every now and then, and that's what Inside Out is. And those are my top 10 favorite movies of 2015. 2016 looks like it has a few really awesome things ahead. And at the end of the year, I'll be doing another of these of what I felt about 2016. And I'll see you throughout the year. I'll be continuing making vlogs occasionally and more loudmouth reviews. And I hope my channel grows. And I love my audience so much. I love all of you. Please subscribe, share, like, everything. Have a great 2016. Bye.